everyone, and welcome to episode 16 of Superannuated Starman. If this is your first time listening, please consider going back and checking out some of our other episodes. I'm your host, Sean Ryan, and today I'll be joined by Chris Duerksen.
How's it going, Sean?
It's going, brother. How are you doing today?
Good. How about you, Cory?
Happy birthday!
Like he mentioned, we have a very special episode because as of this recording, it has been 1 year since I first uploaded the very first episode of Superannuated Starman. I usually give my thanks to you guys at the end of each episode, but Chris, thank you so much for agreeing to start this podcast with me and for sitting down and telling me and everyone else your story about Super Mario World. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for inviting me and bringing me in, and this has been amazing.
It has. It's been a lot of fun. And Cory, you joined us as a guest on episode 4 where we discussed our memories of Star Fox.
Yes, I did. Thank you for bringing me on to be the better host than Chris.
Yeah, after that episode, I was talking to Chris like immediately after we finished, and I was like, hey, do you think he'd be willing to come back again? Because you brought so much to the table that you just had to be a permanent part of this show.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. And you, the listener out there, I'm going to thank you again at the end of the episode like I always do, but I want to extend my honest and most sincere gratitude for listening to this show. I see the download numbers and I see where people around the world are downloading from. I don't care about the metrics. That doesn't matter to me. It's just kind of makes me feel good knowing that someone out there is listening to me talk to my friends about video games and stuff that I used to play as a kid. That's just, I don't know. I don't know what to say other than thank you all so much for doing what you do. And I hope that you stick around. We don't ask for any donations. We don't have commercials on the show. We don't have any sponsors. We don't have any ads, and it's going to stay that way. I started Superannuated Starman because I wanted to talk about old video games I used to play as a kid. And it's just been an amazing experience. And it's one that I hope that we continue for a long, long time.
And I would like to add a little amendment on that and say special thank you to Jay, Mr. J Dog Smooth, who is the only real human being that I've confirmed. He passed the CAPTCHA test. So thanks for saying hi, buddy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's real. There's at least one person.
There's one real guy out there. The rest of you robots.
I wanted to ask you guys if either of you have any memories in particular from the last year that we've been doing the show, if there's anything that stuck out to you that you really liked or that just mattered to you on the show. You got anything, Cory?
I mean, I think that our shameless advertising of Pizza Hut is probably my favorite ongoing thing. Starting with, the Ninja Turtles and confirming that Donatello is the worst Ninja Turtle by a round of, voting system.
Wait, he's not the worst.
Yeah, everyone else picked a different Ninja Turtle. Donatello was picked by 0 people. So you can't tell me he's the best.
Yeah, but there's only 3 of us.
He's good to play with, but by no means is he the worst.
He's not the worst. Leonardo's the worst.
Oh no.
Look, all of us chose a turtle and none of us chose Donatello.
Yeah, so but if you asked me what my top 3 were,
let me finish, please. At the very least, he is not good enough to be number 1 in anyone's book. Therefore,
yes, that's fair.
He is the worst turtle.
Okay, I can get by that.
I'm sure he's a great number 2 to a lot of people out there.
That's not the point. The point is that he's universally not the first pick.
Hey, listeners, if you disagree, leave a comment in the comment section.
You know what? Listen, I already asked Jay, and he said it was Michelangelo, but everyone else, you're all robots anyway, because I haven't, had you pass a CAPTCHA test, so their opinions don't matter.
Robots would like Donatello the most.
No, they wouldn't.
Chris, do you have any memories that you want to share?
I've had a lot of fun episodes, but mostly, as weird as it sounds, I've liked how this has changed my day to day and give me something, because I'm more of a modern gamer. Like up until this, I didn't play a whole lot of retro games that often.
And now you have homework every 2 weeks.
Yeah, I love the homework, but I also love talking to people about it. Like last Christmas, taking my little SNES Mini over to the family Christmas and playing with my nephews down in the basement, and yeah, like just the way that this is so seamlessly creeped back into my life and has been such a positive, just fun little light in my life has been great.
Yeah, and I mean, I am a bystander in this, but it is really fun to hear you like play these old games and talk about like, introducing your kid to them and stuff. So that's always been pretty cool.
Yeah,
Oh
that
man,
has been a really great moment.
yeah, and I don't know, like I just love having these games back in my life, and to be honest, I feel bad that like I never thought about it before, but yeah, now that they're back, it's great.
You know what? One of my other favorite moments is that we discovered that Journeys Faithfully was in Mega Man. So
Yeah,
that was good.
I
Oh, I
will,
forgot about that.
and I will admit, like probably, oh man, Ninja Turtles.
Ninja Turtles and
Eh,
Pizza Hut. What else do we have to cover?
yeah, specifically my running gag that I will mention Ninja Turtles, Pizza Hut, and Mario in every episode.
Mario, that's the other piece.
Which, oh man, that was going to be really hard to bring that up in this one. I wasn't sure how I was going to be able to do it, so we just checked that list. So
Good thing
thank
we
you.
just crammed that in there for you.
Yeah, it wasn't
At
elegant,
least it's
but
out of the way. It's
yes,
out of
it's
the
out of the
way.
way.
I don't have to worry about it. I don't
Think
have
of some
to.
other way to put it
I
in
won't have
here.
to fend it off later.
This beat 'em up really reminds me of Mario's beat 'em up on the Famicom system.
I've only
Pretty
listened
fresh.
to the episodes once after completing them all. So I go through and I do all the editing and then I upload it. And then I usually don't listen to it for several weeks. But the one episode I have listened to more than once is the Castlevania episode because
Cory.
Cory's meltdown.
Just listening to me fly off the handle.
Yeah, where you just go berserk about how unfair that game is and how
It's
it's just
very punishing.
it just brutalized you.
And then he makes us play Shinobi. Like, come on.
Shinobi's a great game.
I did enjoy that game. I'm glad that I got the chance to play that.
There hasn't been a single game where I'm like, I didn't like. I'm glad that we've played every game that we've played.
Yeah, I can't think of a bad one we've played so far. We'll have to do that at some point. It's just
Oh,
find
Shinobi was bad, but I'm glad I played it.
No, Shinobi's not bad.
No.
Shinobi's a great title.
I know. I'm probably gonna get a lot of hate for that.
Shinobi's so much more forgiving. Like, you don't fall into murder holes every 3 seconds with Shinobi. Just
And-
because you didn't read a manual and you can't do a double jump to throw.
No.
shurikens.
That was me. I did read the manual.
Oh, okay. So
It's
Sean
Sean
that
that
didn't
didn't
know
read
how
the
to use the
manual.
powers. That's right.
It was
Yeah.
me. It was me.
Yeah, just because you're bad at double jumping and you can't throw shrinkins.
Shurikens.
Shrinkins.
Thank you.
Shuriken.
Shrinkin.
Moving along. We've
Longest
covered
intro ever.
we've
Are we
covered
talking about a game
Shining
today?
Force 2. We've covered Street Fighter 2. It only makes sense that we now cover Streets of Rage 2. One of the best beat 'em ups on the Sega Genesis.
And honestly, a soundtrack that could be in a club today.
It's good. It's a great soundtrack. And speaking of that soundtrack, let's go ahead and take a break before we start the history and enjoy some of that music from Streets of Rage 2. Streets of Rage 2, or Bare Knuckle 2 as it's known in Japan, is a side-scrolling beat-em-up developed by Sega and several other companies working jointly to develop this title. It was released first in North America on December 20th of 1992 and came out the next month in Japan and Europe. It also saw ports to the Sega Game Gear and the Sega Master System in the later half of 1993. A little bit on these ports. The Master System and Game Gear version of Streets of Rage 2 are vastly inferior to its 16-bit counterpart on the Genesis/Mega Drive. The levels are different, the graphics are downgraded, and Max isn't included as a playable character.
I did not know that.
Additionally, the Game Gear version doesn't display the enemy names. However, exclusive to the Game Gear version, there is an additional boss in level 3, the amusement park, named Predator. His main form of attacking is to vanish, then create a targeting reticule over the player, after which he then reappears and shoots a bullet in the player's direction. Shocking no one, the boss looks very similar to the Predator from the Alien franchise.
That's pretty awesome.
And we're going to get to just how popular this game is and was, but to give some context on how popular it is, Sega has included it in some type of collection or compilation for basically every console generation after it was released. They've continued to publish these collections on multiple platforms. And it's about time that I go my rant about the 3DS and its inevitable shutdown early next year. M2 did a port of this game that's available on the 3DS as a part of the 3D Classic series. In addition to the stereoscopic 3D effect that they implemented into the game, they included 2 new gameplay modes. If you have a 3DS, you need to buy this game. When the eShop shuts down, there'll be no legitimate way of obtaining or playing this unique version of the game. Worse yet, it's not one of the titles that was included in the Sega 3D Classics collection that was released in North America. So if you don't know, in Japan, they had 3 different iterations of all of these 3D classic titles that Sega published. Only the second one from Japan came to North America. That was the only one we got. However, if you have a Japanese 3DS or you have a hacked 3DS from another region and you have $300 burning a hole in your pocket, you can purchase the Sega 3D Fugoku Archives 3 Final Stage, which includes Bare Knuckle 2 along with several other Sega 3D classics. I know that's a lot. I know that's my rant. I'll get right back to the history.
Question.
Yeah.
Why does Nintendo hate money?
I don't understand. These games are so good. And
You'd-
that's
You'd
Go
think
ahead,
they
go
could at least like just report them to the Switch, like, or something. Like, it doesn't cost them anything to keep those services running.
even without the 3D effect, which looks amazing, there's so many quality of life improvements to each and every one of these games. Specifically the Sega 3D classics. M2 did such an amazing job on these ports that
It
Go ahead.
it just blows my mind. Like, it cost them literally nothing. Like, I'm sure there's some minimal upkeep to have those servers running in the background or whatever, so they can connect to the marketplace, but it's got to be so small in comparison to like daily sales. I just don't understand why they just can't keep these open for people.
Someone somewhere has built some kind of spreadsheet and concluded that
Well,
it's just not.
that guy is lame, and we should
Yeah.
probably karate chop him.
I
Hey.
totally agree with you. I don't want these things to be shut down. I don't want these things to be lost in time because that's what's going to happen. As soon as those servers shut down, so many 3DS games are gone because there's no physical way to play these games.
Yeah, it's the same thing with Sony. Like, I had the digital content for like the PS3 or whatever, and then when the PS4 came out, they're like, no, you can't use that stuff anymore. I'm just like, well, why? It's like, well, it's PS3 access only. Like, okay, whatever, Sony.
That was
And
a
that
big-
is why all
Go
the
ahead.
digitals, like on Switch now, like I want a physical copy of everything.
Yeah, just back it up to a solid state drive and throw it in a drawer.
I could go on forever about my complaints with the digital ecosystem, but I'm gonna
Everybody just
I'm
buy
gonna-
from Good Old Games.
I'm
There's-
gonna put that out of my head, and I'm just gonna keep focusing on Streets of Rage 2. So
This is supposed to be a happy episode.
This is a
Happy
happy
anniversary.
episode.
It
We're,
is.
we're rallying against consumerism and talking about the wonderful game society we had as children.
There you go.
So back to the history. Ayano Kishiro served as the lead graphic designer and one of the planners on the game. She designed the graphics, the characters, and the combat mechanics. You may know her brother. His name appears on the title screen, and he served as the lead music composer on the project. That is Yuzo Koshiro. Just some of the games that Yuzo Koshiro has composed titles for include Ys 1 and 2, The Revenge of Shinobi, ActRaiser 1 and 2, Sonic the Hedgehog, the 8-bit version, Batman Returns, Shenmue 1 and 2, and of course, the Streets of Rage series, and many other games he had a hand in, but maybe didn't compose the entire soundtrack. The soundtrack was influenced by electronic dance music, specifically house, techno, and another genre known as breakbeat. The soundtrack of Streets of Rage 2 is considered, quote, revolutionary and ahead of its time for its blend of swaggering house synths. Here's an interesting quote from Yuzo Koshiro regarding the soundtrack. For Bare Knuckle, I used the PC-88 and an original programming language I developed myself. The original was called MML, which stands for Music Macro Language. It's based on NEC's basic program, but I modified it heavily. It was more a basic style language at first, but I modified it to be something more like assembly. I called it Music Love. I use it for all the bare knuckle games. I think that is so amazing that not only is he an amazing composer, but he's also a talented programmer.
Yeah, he made it himself.
That fascinates me. I wish that we had more information. I'd love to have just books all about the little things that these guys have done outside of what they're known for. Because when I think of Yuzo Koshiro, I don't think of him as a programmer. I think of him as a music composer.
Oh yeah, that's
It is so wild, like how people, that word is, this is kind of like the frontier era, like where people still didn't have, one job title, and we were kind of figuring stuff out, and the hardware was constantly changing. And it is really interesting, like how many hats people had to wear back in the day. We talked about like Romero and everybody else were, they're programming and they're also storyboarding and they're also, helping with the music and everything else. And it is just really cool.
That's a really good point. And I'd like to talk about a few of the regional differences between the Japanese release and other territories. The biggest being the title screen, which says Bare Knuckle 2, with the 2 being Roman numerals in the Japanese version, and Streets of Rage 2 elsewhere. Blaze, the female character, when she performs a jump kick in the Japanese version, you can see some of her undergarments, and this sprite was completely changed to cover her up. Mr. X will smoke a cigar while sitting in his chair while his minions attack you in the uncensored version. This was changed in the PAL and North American releases, where the cigar was completely removed. Lastly, in the Japanese version, Sammy Skate Hunter, brother of the kidnapped Adam Hunter, is listed as Sammy, whereas in other versions, he's known as Skate. And fun fact, in the North American and PAL release, the manuals have a typo where they refer to Sammy as Eddie Hunter.
Was it the original name?
This may have been his original name, or it could just have been an error that wasn't caught.
Oh.
Another little bit of trivia. On August 2nd of 2021, Yuzo Koshiro released a short minute-and-a-half video on his Twitter feed celebrating the 30th anniversary of the Streets of Rage series. He informed the public that the most famous quote, the most famous move of the series, Axel's Grand Upper, is actually a mistranslation that he kept quiet for 3 decades.
Are you going to tell us what it is?
Yeah, I'm getting there. I'm building up the suspense.
Because now I'm just thinking, bare knuckle!
The move was actually intended to be called ground upper. He goes on to say, quote, you can see the back of Axel's hand touch the ground when he hits the uppercut. Therefore, I named it ground upper. But we all hear it as grand upper.
See, I hear it as bare knuckle.
No way.
Yeah. Every time he's saying it, I just hear bare knuckle.
I'm going to add that in right here. And let everybody decide for themselves what they hear.
Bare knuckle.
Grandapa!
All right, I'm
Bare
going to stop
knuckle.
there, guys, because I'm sure that there'll be more discussion about this game's history as we discuss our own. So let's take a break, and when we come back, we're going to hear from Cory and listen to his memories, so enjoy some more music from Streets of Rage 2. Welcome back, everybody. So this is the segment where we discuss our childhood memories of the game, and we're going to go ahead and start with Cory and his memories of childhood and Streets of Rage 2. Cory, will you tell us what your experience is that you remember with this game? How did you play it? Did you own the game, or was it something that someone else owned? Did you rent it? Let me hear
Yes,
everything.
this is one of the games that we owned, and it was played nonstop. This is probably one of the top like 5 titles that you could find in my console on any given day. One of the reasons is because it's got co-op, and it's a really fun beat 'em up. And as we've kind of discussed, the music is amazing, and the replayability is really fun because there's 4 characters, and you can, run around and have a good time with that. But as kids, like it's a really fun game, and it's pretty hard. And I think that kind of lends to it as well. It's a pretty lengthy game.
No,
What do you
hey,
mean
Cory.
no?
No.
Oh,
Sorry, I was just trying to interrupt. Like Cory, like when you were a kid, did you have friends?
yeah. Yes.
I was just wondering, like, so, like, was this like one like your guys' main, like when you had friends over, was this like the main game that like?
Oh yeah. I mean, because like I said, we were a Genesis household for the most part. So instead of like Turtles in Time, like this was our side-scrolling beat 'em up to have at the house here, and I mean it looks gorgeous. It still looks really good by today's standards, honestly,
I
and
agree.
it plays really well. And there is sort of the what's the word? Like there's team damage, like there's friendly fire, so there is sort of this element of competitiveness to it where there are only like certain healing power ups on the ground. Like you can break open containers and you'll find like an apple or a chicken to heal you. And like you can, you know, either play nicely and you can, share with your
Hey,
teammates,
you need this apple.
or you can be a jerk and you can scoop it up right away and be like, no, I was injured. Leave me alone. And then you can get bonus points for eating food, at full health. Um, but yeah, it's really fun, and this is something that we played at least once a week as children. And I mean, it's pretty easy to switch off with, if you end up dying, you just press start to get back in the game, and you can do a little character select from like the top right corner where you cycle through and pick who you want to play. And there's 4 characters, and they all have a very different feel to them. You have Axel and Blaze, and then you have Skate and Max. And Max is this big hulking dude that does like this forward somersault charge attack. And then we discussed how Axel has like this uppercut ability, and Blaze
Yeah,
has
his
this
bare
like,
knuckle punch.
yeah, his bare knuckle punch. And then Blaze has this like flying two-handed like energy attack that she does. And Skate is like this little kid with roller skates, and he does like a corkscrew drill attack with his
Hey, they're
abilities.
roller blades. He's
Whatever.
cooler than that.
But yeah, so I mean, my 2 characters growing up were definitely Max and Skate, and I
Interesting.
I spam those abilities nonstop, especially like Skate, where you go corkscrew kick, and you just blast groups of people. But yeah, I love this game. It's really fun, and everything feels pretty visceral. Like when you punch enemies, they go flying, and there's like really great audio to it, where it's like that big like smack 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 noise, and like you're kind of on a timer, and there's bosses and mini bosses on every floor, and it's a lot of fun. And like there's a lot of weapons, so you'll find like knives and pipes and like baseball bats and stuff, and you can pick them up and you can beat people up with them, or you can just throw them at people, which was my favorite way of playing, was constantly picking items up and just whipping them at other people.
Plus,
I
if
have a
you
So
whip
question
it,
for
that
you.
means they can't pick it up.
I have a question for you, Cory.
yes.
So we have your brother Kyle on the show, and we've talked to him many times about different games that we played. Did your sisters ever join in and play this game?
Yeah, my sisters would get in on this one too.
What about the
Um,
parents?
No, not really. My parents weren't cool. Um, like my mom would play like Mario, and she was a really big Mario fan. But as
And you
far
were
as
a
like,
Genesis household.
yeah, well, and that's the thing is like we had a Nintendo like when I was like a lot younger,
But then
and then
Nintendo's
we
just
ended
for
up like,
dumb old parents.
well, and then we like gave it away to like some other family. And then we ended up getting a Super Nintendo finally because we did have like Super Mario World and stuff. But for the most of my formative years, it was a lot of Genesis games, and like my parents weren't really picking that up for anything.
That makes sense. What characters did your sisters pick?
I think a lot of the time they would pick Blaze. My sister Kayla would pick Skate a lot. She enjoyed playing him. But yeah, I think Blaze being the only female character, like there was usually a fight to get a hold of that one.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that there wasn't more representation at that time because we could have had, I feel like we could have had more female gamers growing up if there had been more of that female representation. But there's tons now,
Yeah,
but
and I
Yeah, but
mean,
didn't exist
we're not
then.
gonna feel the effects from that for 20 years. Like because everybody our age, yeah, like I'm so sick of the reputation like of gamers our age. There's a stereotype against girls that girls are bad at gaming, but and I'm sure that helped create that.
yeah, and I mean, I know plenty of women our age that play video games, but it is very like male dominated franchise in the early '90s, and you really didn't start seeing a lot of like female representation until probably like Tomb Raider and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
despite Samus Aran from Metroid
Well,
being
but
one of
you
the
really
first,
didn't
but
know she
you
was a
didn't
girl
know
until the
exactly.
end. And I
And
mean, like, she's really the only example other than, I think we've kind of discussed like Chun Li and a couple other people like, Blaze and stuff. But
And unfortunately, with Samus Aran, using her as an example, you don't discover she's a female unless you beat it under a certain time limit. And then when you
yeah,
do, she's in a bikini.
yeah, very great.
Yeah, there was so many other ways they could have done that, but I digress. Is there anything else you want to mention about your memories of Streets of Rage 2?
No, I mean, it's kind of the childhood staple, and it was something that I frequently recall playing, and it was one of the things where I don't think anyone ever had a bad thing to say about it. Like if you were like, "Hey, let's play this," I don't think anyone was ever like, "No, I don't want to do that. It's stupid." Like this was just a really, really good beat 'em up, and I think it was kind of universally loved by like friends and family.
I did have someone that said it was stupid, but they didn't want to play it. I didn't own this game as a kid, but I had a friend who did. And my experience of the game was limited to whenever I could go over to his house and if he wanted to play it. And I mentioned this before in a different episode we had where he had played this game so much and it was old hat to him that I didn't even know he owned it until I was at his house and I was going through his stack of games and it was like buried at the very bottom. And so my only avenue to play this game at the time was to see if he wanted to play. And you know how it is being kids. Whenever you have the chance to stay inside, that's great. That's perfect because his parents would make us go outside and play most of the
Yep.
time. And he wanted to play a game called General Chaos, which is an isometric arcade slash strategy game. While it's not nearly as timeless as Streets of Rage 2, it's
I
a
never
fun
heard of it.
game, but I wanted to play Streets of Rage, and that just wasn't happening. It wasn't until I was a teenager and I got into emulation in the ROM scene that I played through this game on an emulator called KGen 98 that ran on MS DOS.
Oh yeah.
I did not have a powerful computer at the time. It was very low end, even by standards of that time, and it ran very poorly, even with the frame skip. Which it could have been the computer, which it most likely was. It could have been the emulator, which it was in its infancy, and it's also running on MS DOS, which isn't exactly known as being a powerhouse. Regardless of all that, it did not run very well. Honestly, I don't remember much of this game at all, and I don't remember if I ever beat it, which is probably unlikely when you have access to so many other games. When you die or even have the slightest roadblock, it's too easy to just quit and load up another ROM and try something else out.
Yeah, it's fair.
Chris, what about you?
So when we moved out to Sydney, um, we moved from Urbana to Sydney, and we lived in this apartment building. And for the first few months there, I didn't really know anybody in town. And then finally, I don't know how I came across it. I think my mom was talking to one of the moms on the first floor, and she had a kid about my age, and he had this game, and I just remember finding any excuse I could to go hang out and play this game down the first floor, and like this, so this game, like, and this was really, man, this was probably when I was 8 years old. This was probably my first real experience with Sega outside of Sonic, and at the time I was still rocking my NES. So this game was an arcade game in his house. Like this was a modern fighting game that arcade quality. It had Sega had the 3-button controller, so that was cooler, and this game was just a lot of fun. It was super colorful, super exciting. It had the good character selection, so like I don't know. It was just everything that Nintendo wasn't. And
oh, don't be that guy.
No. I mean, like compared in my little world, in my little experience, because I mean, like, yeah, like this, like to me, like this was the first real game where I was like, wow, this is like playing an arcade game in somebody's house. You know what I mean?
Okay. I thought you were about to bring up that old line, or maybe
Nintendo or whatever. No.
Yeah, Sega does what Nintendo don't.
No. I'm just saying, like, because like I said, I was at that time I was playing Mario games. I was playing Pinball for NES and Ninja Turtles for NES, and then this game, obviously the graphics blew away anything on the NES. The fighting system was just as awesome as an arcade game. And when I was playing this at work, somebody walked by and saw me playing it, and they're like, "Hey, I remember playing that in the arcade." But yeah, like this game was awesome as a kid. I just remember, like, and like I said, this kind of has a special spot because it was my first real Sega experience that wasn't Sonic. So that's pretty much all I got. I honestly, I don't really remember. I was only able to play it a handful of times in that kid's house before we moved, or in the first floor apartment before we moved. But yeah, but it stuck with me. It was one of those games that just kind of, I don't know, I've got little stills of it burned in my brain.
Did either of you use any cheat codes?
No.
No, I didn't even bother thinking about cheat codes.
So
are there any ones that do cool stuff?
It's a little complex because in the way that we played it today, we don't really have the ability to do this. But you go to the main menu, you hold down the A and B buttons on controller 2 while selecting options.
Oh.
After doing that, you can now select how many lives you want, up to 9, and you can choose your starting stage.
Oh, nice. That's fairly easy.
You can play on very easy or mania difficulty.
Oh, Mania, that sounds fun.
Yeah, so they added 2 of those difficulty levels. So it was either super, super easy or super, super hard. And the M2 port that I mentioned earlier, M2 made it so that you can select those abilities without having to worry about this controller 2 option. Because on a 3DS, obviously, there is no option for that. So guys, go out, get it. It's great. Talking to both of you and everybody out there.
Cool games.
So speaking of cool games, is this a good spot to take a break, and we'll come back and talk about what it's like playing it as adults?
I think it's a great time to take a break, and we're going to enjoy some more music from Streets of Rage 2. This is Jungle Bass. back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that music. We're going to go ahead and talk about our experience replaying Streets of Rage 2 today. Chris, why don't you go ahead and start us off? Tell us how you replayed the game and what your thoughts are.
Me?
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think your name is Chris.
Oh, I didn't hear. Sorry, I didn't hear the Chris part. So I played the original version of it.
What do you mean the
And-
original version? Did you?
He went out and bought a Genesis.
The Blockbuster rental.
Got it. I understand.
No, I love replaying this because this game definitely holds up. But I did take some notes on the things that I love about it. First off, like I think we can also talk about the stages because every stage was like an iconic 90s, early 90s video game stage or even like an action movie stage. Because first off, you start in downtown and which I mean every beat 'em up game is this, but you're going through
New
downtown.
York City, 3 a.m.
Yeah, exactly.
Big Apple.
Yeah, and you go through an arcade and a piano lounge and the back alley, and then that takes you to bridge construction, which totally reminds me of Turtles in Time, which I mean this is before Turtles in Time, but anyways, like the bridge construction, you're 1,000 feet up in the air and you see the nighttime skyline in the background, and that takes you to an amusement park, which did you guys think that looked like? Is that like the Magic Kingdom in the background, or?
I don't know. There is like a very Disney Castle-esque thing back there, but there's a lot of like weird roller coasters and stuff too.
Yeah,
so I don't know
exactly. But I thought that was genius because having an amusement park in there gives you a perfect opportunity to have a whole smorgasbord full of settings. Because the amusement park starts off, you're walking on the amusement park and the roller coasters stuff in the background. And then that takes you into an alien room, which like straight up like alien movie embryos.
Oh
on the
yeah, it's
ground.
very Geiger, background.
And then even we were talking about like the mini bosses and stuff there in the game. Like having that as a stage also gives them an excuse to have this weird alien head on a chain as a mini boss. Like it was just a genius way to really like to change the narrative of the game and kind of just keep you guessing.
Chris, you said that you said that you have your notes kind of organized a little bit. Let's talk about that very first level. Just right off the bat, the visuals of the street, the neon signs, the green and orange signposts everywhere, even the green textured street that should look out of place, somehow fits so cohesively that anyone playing for the first time can appreciate the art and audio direction. They go hand in hand so well that it's really unsurprising to me to learn that it was brother and sister duo that brought a large part of this game to life.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, everything was just so, I don't know, it just flowed so well.
What did you guys think about that very first intro level? What sticks out to you?
It's great. I mean, it really feels like some dirty like back alley, because it's a lot of like brick storefronts, and then like there's neon lighting everywhere.
Yeah.
And then you have like these, as you said, they're like these weird teal streets. It's like teal, paving stones, and it feels very much like a boardwalk. And you're just kind of like fighting all these thugs, like making your way down this like seedy, like red light district kind of location. And it's very fun to me.
Yeah, and it totally reminds me of like a setting for a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie or something, like.
Yeah, it's very Hollywood.
Yeah, it's very like glamorous, scummy, late 80s New York. Kind of reminds me of like the Ninja Turtles movie. Like, it really, I don't know. It just sets the stage nicely and just
this scene, this level would not be out of place in Escape from New York. Like,
yeah.
That's a really good way to put it.
But also, and like I was saying, like these are iconic. Like every stage is like an iconic. Every video game, every like I can name 5 other beat 'em up video games that had this setting, including Turtles in Time and Final Fight 2, and like.
It is like the archetypal
exactly
starting zone basically.
And then if we want to Like, are you good with the downtown? You want to move on to the bridge construction because that
Well,
also.
so it goes from downtown to the bar, and then you have like this greaser thug is your first boss, right? And then he's like, slinging knives at you outside the bar here.
Yeah, so your first boss is Jack, and he pulls out a knife and he'll do a dash attack with multiple slashes. And whenever you manage to knock the knife out of his hands, he just pulls out a new one.
Yeah, he whips out a new one, and if you keep him at range,
And
he
he
will
giggles.
actually. Yeah, he goes. But he will. If you keep him at range, he will actually throw knives at you, and I think that is kind of a nice way to introduce the fact that these weapons can also be projectiles.
And there's nothing that feels better than killing him with his own knives.
Oh yeah, just getting him in a corner and shanking him repeatedly until he dies.
That's a great point that you brought up, Corey, about how this game does introduce you to a lot of these things. And the first level is such a great tutorial level. A lot of the enemy placement seems to be around and near objects that can be destroyed. And when you destroy them, more often than not, in this first level at least, there's health pickups. So it kind of trains the player subconsciously to always go out of your way and destroy the surrounding, I don't even know what they call it, just stuff.
Yeah, just the destructible environment,
There you
Mhm.
go. Thank you.
Oh, and
Yeah.
and before we do move past the downtown location, like you mentioned, the little bar that you go through, the piano lounge, like I've always loved that setting, like like in all games, and that's my favorite music in this game.
Oh yeah,
The-
it goes. You transition into like the smooth jazz with the dark lighting and the wood floors and the
Uh-huh. And
pool tables and stuff in the back.
the individually lit tables
Yep.
that are also destructible, and then the piano sitting there next to the bar, and you have your barkeep in the cleaning the counter, and then all of a sudden, that pretty lady at the bar
The
starts
hot lady
attacking
with
you.
the whip that tries
Yes.
to beat you up.
Just starts beating you up, and the bartender's like, "I'm out of here."
Yeah, and then you go into the back alley behind it, and then the bartender's ready to throw down with you.
Yeah.
I'm glad that we brought up the music. We talked about it briefly earlier, just kind of how he went about programming it. But one of the big standouts for this game, for me, is the music. Well, I
Oh,
like that
certainly.
the techno and trance music. I really dig the songs that really bring that jazzy vibe to them.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, you recommended and requested that we play In the Bar, which I think really fits that theme. But I'd also like to mention a track called Slow Moon, which, if I haven't already decided to play it, I'm going to go ahead and add that here. I also want to comment about how smooth the transition is from one scene to the next. There are no major screen transitions. Instead, you just flow right into the next one. Though you do have a brief intermission between stages where they tally your score, because it is essentially an arcade style game.
Yeah.
And and the score actually does matter in this one because you do get bonus lives based on your score.
Yes.
And that was one of the other things that was really fun about co-op too, was when you were playing as a team, like certain items, if you break them open, they'll have like bags of money or like gold bricks in them, and then you can pick those up and get extra lives. So if you're playing with a buddy and your buddy's like got one life left or whatever, you can be like, hey, get the money, and try to like keep them in the game by feeding them score power-ups essentially.
Thank you
Oh,
for
nice.
mentioning that, because I didn't even think to bring up the other quote unquote power ups or pickups rather. You have health, and then you also have is it money bags and bars of gold?
Yep.
Money
Yeah. So
bags and bars
there's
and
yeah
gold.
there's
Yeah.
it's a beige bag with a dollar symbol on it, like a bank robber would have, and then there's these little like it's kind of crappy looking, so it almost looks like a big like pyramid of cheese, but it's supposed to be like a little gold bar pile.
Yeah, it's 3 little bricks of gold.
Yeah, it's 3 little Toblerones stacked on top of each other.
And I think it's funny how when you're going through that first area and there's the arcade machines, you beat them. Like if you destroy the machines, which are bare knuckle machines, by the way, each one gives you a stack of gold.
Yeah, each one has a gold bar underneath it.
So
Oh.
speaking of those machines, stage 3, the amusement park, in the second scene, you're in a small arcade with cabinets lined against the wall with the words bare knuckle on them. And I thought it was a neat Easter egg for the American audience that probably had never heard of bare knuckle, probably had no idea that there was even this game out in Japan. And I
Okay.
took the time. Go ahead.
Oh no, so I had no idea until after starting this game that this game was called Bare Knuckle. Like you guys said, hey, let's play Streets of Rage 2 next, and I was like, okay. I started playing Streets of Rage 2 next, and then this was before you'd started doing any of the deep dive. So I had no idea the first one, it was actually called Bare Knuckle. And when I saw the bare knuckle cabinets, and I heard him saying bare knuckle, I'm like, oh, okay.
He's not saying bare knuckle.
Yeah, well, Chris likes to live in his own fantasy world. It's fine.
That's how he speaks to me.
So
That's how Axel is speaking to me.
I took the time to go ahead and play through the first part of this game in the Japanese release, and unfortunately, the cabinets don't say Streets of Rage in the Japanese version.
Do they say bare knuckles still?
They just say bare knuckle. I'm not gonna lie,
disappointing.
I was so disappointed. And I mentioned earlier how I'd forgotten a lot about this game because I didn't really experience it much as a kid. And I'd forgotten that characters had movesets until stage 2, where I tapped forward to get close to an enemy and I was still too far away. So I tapped forward again and then punched. And then I did Axel's grand upper.
His bare knuckle.
I immediately paused the game and pulled up the manual on my phone. And I was surprised about how much I'd forgotten. The amount of moves that each player has, even though the inputs are all the same for each character, they're very varied.
Yep. Yeah. Everyone's got you've got your like flying kicks and you've got your special attacks and your punch combos and stuff. And there's also like a lot of grappling mechanics too, which I think is probably one of the cooler like hallmarks of this game is being able to like grab people and then get a punch combo like rolling on them, and then you can throw them into like a set of enemies and knock everybody down.
So one thing I discovered while playing through this game, because I did not on my first playthrough or replay through, I got a game over and had to restart. I ran out of all my continues,
and I'm guessing your first one was Axel.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm always going to start off with him. And when I came back through the game, I discovered that if you hit the enemy slowly, like a punch, 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 instead of that rapid tapping, that punch, 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 it will stun lock them. And if you attack too quickly, you'll go through the animation of hitting them and eventually knocking them down. And the weaker enemies, you could just do that normal attack at normal speed. But the stronger ones, especially if you have just that enemy on the screen, if you just slowly hit them enough that you keep them in that animation, you stun lock them all the way until they're dead.
Yeah, I was actually trying to.
Yeah, there's something you said about timing for this.
Yeah,
obviously the problem is that if you don't pay attention and you're trying to stun lock a large enemy, there could be smaller ones that'll just sneak up behind you and start attacking you.
Oh man, when you get surrounded by a few guys on each side of you, your life bar drops so quick.
Oh yeah, you got to start jumping away.
Yeah, it's not like other games that when you take damage, you get an iframe. In this game, no, you feel each punch. Your life bar drops for each punch that's thrown at you. If you got 3 guys hitting you at the same time, your life just chunks off.
I also like how each enemy has their own name.
Yeah,
yes.
I had that in my notes too.
Even though they get recycled, like several of the other assets in the game, like the enemies get recycled with, minor palette swats.
Going from yellow sign to red sign to green sign.
Yeah, you have everybody got named, but some of the names were pretty ridiculous, like Yellow Signal. Come on. But did you guys notice how the more obese enemies had names like Balloon and Buffet?
Yeah, and there's two of them that I wanted to point out because there's Big Ben, which is
Yeah, he's the big
big
baseball coach guy that you
Yeah.
fight on the field.
and then there's one after him. His name is Big Guy, and another round guy. His name is Heart. And the funny thing about it is I'm like, oh, and he attacks you. He's a heart attack, and he's fat, so he's gonna have a heart attack. Ha ha. But then he starts shooting fire out of his mouth. I'm like, oh wait, heartburn? Like
Yeah,
somebody who eats too much gets heartburn? I don't know.
I don't know if those
they're a
puns
little
are
clever.
intentional, but that's something. Chris, you already mentioned it already, but what the hell was up with the alien pods out of nowhere?
That's why I'm saying, like I mean, I think the amusement park just gave them an excuse because there's so many like
Yeah,
cliche things in this game. And like you said, like there's obviously in the other version, there's the reference to Predator. Here's the reference to Alien. Like,
yeah, it is really cool because to talk about the amusement park. So you go in and you kind of go through like the entrance to the park where you see like the knockoff Magic Kingdom in the background and all the park benches and stuff, and then you get inside and you walk through this arcade, and then you make your way onto the Pirates ride, and it says Pirates like in the big logo as you're transitioning into the doorway,
and I'm
and then
like,
you
is that
end up
Pirates of the Caribbean?
yeah, and then you end up on a pirate ship and you fight ninjas on a pirate ship. I don't know why they're ninjas. But then you go, on another one of these little boardwalks, and then you enter this like big blue, like toothy alien maw mouth, and then you're on like the cool alien ride, and it seriously does look like an H.R. Geiger painting. Like there's a bunch of like these creepy, like weird symbols in the background, and everything's got a misty fog in it, and there's like
Well,
these
and
little like egg things that you can break open that
and
give you
it's
money.
well, it's totally the egg sacs from Alien with
Yeah.
tiny little embryo in it.
Yeah, and then there's
Like you
this
can even
big
see
like
the outline.
demon skull thing on the wall that's like blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, you can even see that the outline in those egg sacs that is a tiny little alien
Yeah.
from
Little
the
face hugger.
franchise. Yeah.
Yeah,
Did
it's
any of you
great.
stop to read some of the signs that are posted on the fences?
Yes.
Going
Do
towards-
baseball.
Do baseball, or it's like Boo.
Yeah. Sega Stadium.
What the hell does that? It's like Boo?
Well, I think that's Japan. That's Japan right there.
At the stadium itself, you just see signs that say audio. That's all they. That's it's. I don't. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what level it was. What numbered level, but it's at the end of the ship. And one of the most challenging bosses for me was Rocky Bear. He's the really large guy that I think he has boxing mitts, but he stands up on his tippy toes, and he's so fast and he hits so hard. And maybe I'm wrong, but it seemed like he was able to do a down jump attack. And what I mean by that was if you were beneath him in the level, he could directly attack you by jumping downwards.
Oh, like he could aim down another row essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was so not fair.
Yeah.
He's a tough one. He's like, and you're kind of like on a boat when you first fight this guy, as I recall. And
yeah, I think he's at the end of the ship.
Yeah, he's at the end of the ship, and he has this like jumping like downward attack that you're talking about. But he looks like he's like a big Russian sailor with this striped shirt on, and he's bald with a mustache, and he's like this big fat guy, and he's got boxing gloves.
See, I thought he reminds me of like a 19.
Yeah, but he looks like your stereotypical like big angry longshoreman type of dude, and he's very cheap.
Yeah, cheap. That's the word to describe him. He's about your mid game point, and he was my roadblock. He's where I died and had to restart. And that's where I started being more strategic, going ahead and instead of attacking my enemies as quick as I could, I started stun locking them so that it conserved my health and so that I had more time to just do other things at the level, like pick up all the gold and money.
Yeah,
so
get your stuff extra points. Yep.
Oh,
but yeah,
one thing
Well, go ahead, Chris.
Oh, I was just gonna say one thing I noticed, like on my second playthrough, you can manage how many enemies are on the screen in some places where, like, instead of just rushing forward and just letting them flood, if you get close, you'll
Yes.
trigger one, and then if you just stop and just fight that guy there and let him keep coming to you, you won't trigger the ones all the way on the right side of the screen. So that way, instead of being swarmed with 8 dudes, you can pick them off a couple at a time.
Yeah, I think that's just a trick that we have all learned while playing video games.
Side
learning how to
scroller beat 'em ups, especially.
learning how to spawn and despawn enemies, I think is a skill you have to learn or you'll get wrecked.
But yeah, I wanted to say specifically about the R Bear fight. He's like one of the first opponents you kind of run into that not only can he break your combos by interrupting you with like quick jab attacks, but he also can put you into a grapple, and then he starts headbutting you. And so
he
it's
can grapple you halfway through your combo
yeah,
too.
so it's one of these fights where you actually have to start like using strategy and kind of backing off after you knock into him so he doesn't, immediately counter you, and it starts to become more of a kind of like intellectual fight versus you just button mashing at that point. And I think this is kind of like the turning point of the game here.
That's a really good point that you're making because up until this point, you can, and I was just kind of button mash through the game. And like I said, I had to die and go all the way back and start applying some strategy before I could actually really get through this game. Not with ease, because it gets pretty intense on some of the later levels, but it made it so much easier once I kind of got a better rhythm. And the question, the boss for the second level, was that Jet? Was that a jetpack guy?
Yes, yeah, we didn't even
On the
mention
bridge.
him.
Yeah.
I had so many problems with him until I got that timing down because he'll be above you. He flies, he has a jetpack, and then he has this attack where he just darts across the screen and slams into you.
Yeah, he's the Rocketeer. He's got his fist out and he's flying right at you.
And if you do a jump attack, he's fine. But if you try to punch him, it doesn't work.
Yeah, the easiest way to cheese him is to just keep jump kicking him in the head.
Well, oh
Yeah,
man, I had a hard time with him too because I'm like, okay, I need to line up with where his shadow is on the ground, so that way I can hit him, and half the time I still miss.
Yeah, that's another one of the issues is that when he dive bombs you and he tries to charge forward, like you're really not sure what lane he's in until he's coming at you. So like if you try to interrupt him, you might end up being like too high or too low on the screen, and then he ends up shooting past you. And then when you go to reposition yourself, he ends up spinning around and crashing into you at that point. Then you take damage.
let's go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, we're going to bring on Kyle. He's also going to talk about some of his memories real quick while we continue to discuss the rest of the game now that we're at like a midway point. Like I said before, we have a latecomer to the show. Kyle, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. And I already asked these guys earlier what some of their favorite moments were before. So real brief before we go ahead and get back into Streets of Rage 2, is there any moment that you remember on the show, whether you either as a guest or listening to some of these episodes, that really stands out to you?
A moment on this show? Oh, we're doing like
it's the 1 year
20
anniversary.
Yeah. No, I think I really enjoy being on this show simply because you talk about games that I really enjoy and you respect my opinion. So it's great.
No, we
So,
don't.
like, yeah, you do. You talk about like music and stuff, and we're probably going to talk about music together with Streets of Rage. No,
course.
it's just an incredibly enjoyable time that I have being around you guys. Sorry for being an hour late. I was watching the Minnesota Vikings surprisingly win the game.
So did the
Wow.
Bears.
There you go.
Well, I'm not really a sports guy. I have no opinion about that. But
You
we
can at least
are
say
now,
congratulations.
I'm not, and we are now talking about replaying Streets of Rage 2 today. And so far, we have discussed the first several levels. We've gotten past the arcade. We are now past the ship. The last boss that we talked about was our bear or Rocky Bear. He's the boss that is much larger than your character. He's bald. He kind of stands on his tippy toes. And he just, for me, he just wrecked it. I died to him, had to restart and play through the level. So
Is that boxing fella?
Yeah, that's the
Yes.
fat boxing.
Yeah,
Old
guy.
boxing
I
fella.
think he has the
Old-timey
boxing
boxer.
gloves on.
Yep. No, yeah, he has a long reach, and of course, like most bosses in this game, anytime you get hit, you lose your footing and you fall backwards, and then they combo into that if you can't kind of get up and get away quickly.
You know what's one thing that we didn't talk about, and I didn't think of it until just now, the button layout. So you have A, B, and C, and guys, correct me if I'm wrong. You had A was a jump, I believe. B was your
C
attack.
was jump.
C was jump. So which one was your special?
A was special.
A was special?
Yeah, in Sega Genesis controller, A was special, B was attack, C was jump. And then they all kind of do certain things depending on the context of how you're moving.
Yeah. So
Or if
I
you're
played
grabbing
this-
somebody.
I played this on the 3DS, so
Okay.
I don't know exactly which button correlated to which. I just kind of had to figure it out. But one of the things you can do if you're being overwhelmed by enemies, if you just hit that special button, it will do a special move and it will knock away several of the enemies around you and allow you to get a chance to kind of regain that footing that Kyle was talking about. Unfortunately, it does take a little bit of health.
Right.
You have to use it sparingly.
So Corey and I, last weekend we were playing through the fourth game, Streets of Rage 4, which got away with that idea. I think most modern kind of these side-scrolling beat 'em ups are going towards this route where it doesn't take your health, but they'll do some other meter to allow you bonuses if it's higher, and then the special move takes that meter away. But yeah, the specials in this game were designed, and in the fourth, the whole series is about getting out of a bad situation and doing a lot of damage quickly, and then so you could kind of regroup and move away.
So for me, like I've mentioned, after Rocky Bear, after losing to him, I had to restart. So a lot of my notes from this point on get kind of sketchy because I wasn't taking such good notes. I was trying to get through the game as quickly as possible up until this point. So the next area that I have in my notes is the jungle stage. Is that what you guys remember?
Yes.
Well, there's the beach, right?
Is it a beach and then it moves on to a jungle?
Oh well, yeah. At the end of the ship, there's the beach segues to the jungle. But
yeah,
the beach,
you
I
land
went.
on the
Yeah.
beach and then it goes into the jungle. With
Yeah,
the
you're on the
lakes and
beach for like
stuff.
50 yards.
Yeah, there's the previous bosses are showing up as sub bosses now,
Yes.
Yes.
especially.
Particularly this stage, the bosses for the jungle stage, you had Southern and Stealth. And this was the jetpack guy, Stealth, and then one of those ninjas that looks like Yoshimitsu from Tekken.
Yeah, the creepy claw man.
Yeah.
He
Oh, man.
he does
Yeah,
a
I hate
twirl
it.
move every time and you have to jump over it.
Together, those two bosses were an absolute pain in the ass. And I really wish that I had someone else playing with me because I feel like it would have made it a lot better.
Divide and conquer.
I needed some help at that point. But this is where I have a problem with recycling bosses. I understand that there are limitations and time constraints. Some of the limitations are just the hardware of the time. You only have so much space for these cartridges.
Yeah,
So
we've mentioned that at length as well.
Yeah, so
Oh.
I do get it. I do understand hardware limitations and time constraints, but that means it's not possible to create the hundreds of unique enemies. So they gave them unique names. That's great. That's awesome.
I thought
That's
that was
one way to
funny.
do it.
Yeah.
But reusing two bosses from an earlier stage and putting them together tells me that they were either on a time crunch and content got cut, or they took the lazy route and didn't create a unique boss for that stage.
Well, I think it's more like they already had 5 or 6 content, like typical boss types, and then they just mixed them together to make it more difficult. That was fairly common back in the day. I'm trying to think of the what's the other beat 'em up that was on the arcade with the mayor Hagar.
Final fight.
Final
too.
Fight was very similar
Yeah.
to this game in that when you got deeper, we need more content. Let's just mix two bosses that will work together, give them less health, and then that'll kind of be the new boss fight. At the same time, was that the final boss or was that the sub boss fight in the beach level?
I think it was sub.
Yeah, that was like the middle fight. So
well,
I think that's that's fine.
The two guys at the end is where you clear stage 6, so it is the end of the section in the jungle.
Okay. So a little bit lazy, but at the same time, you're utilizing your assets in a fun way. Right after this is the elevator fight, right? The gauntlet fight.
Yes. So
Yeah, you
Okay,
go into
so
the
who
factory
cares?
floor.
Yeah, so we're gonna do the gauntlet right after this. So who cares?
I don't mind bosses coming back later in a game as standard enemies, but unique and interesting bosses are, to me, a reward for the player. So I feel that they should have taken the time and the effort to make that happen. That instead of reusing two bosses from before for an end stage boss, go ahead and make someone new and unique, and let that combo team where you had what were the Southern and Stealth, let them be a mini boss. If
Yeah,
I'm
and I
Go ahead.
mean to your to kind of build on what you were speaking earlier, I don't know if it's just a time constraint or if this was like a added level laid on where they're just like, we just need to put this in as filler to make the game a little longer, or if it is just genuine laziness. But I think it does leave this section a little lacking. But to me, this whole like introductory area that we're in, like the jungle, is just the kind of the filler to get into the cool end fight tower now anyway, where we're gonna go chase down Mr. X. So I don't know if they felt the same way, where it's just like, yeah, well, we just need something here to make this, feasible.
okay, and that elevator climb in level 7 is intense.
It's like the best section of the whole game.
Absolutely.
In my
I
opinion.
feel the same. Yeah, no, I feel the same way. That was my favorite area. That's where you feel like you're doing the most damage, and it's just a good rumble.
Unfortunately, and I'll be the buzzkill, I feel that after you finish it, it's very anticlimactic because you have you have a battle with two robots.
Yeah, I was just like, where did that come from? I never got that far as a kid. Obviously, I'm like, wait a minute, wait, robots now? Like,
And then at the very beginning of the next stage, they reuse that same robot as a normal enemy. You just
Yeah.
They go
defeated
bronk,
two-
bronk, 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 bronk every time you hit them. Yeah.
Yeah,
They get the little mace on the arm.
you just defeated two bosses of this same character, and now he's a regular enemy. I get it; it's the end of the game, and I just said I don't have a problem with them reusing bosses as regular enemies, but they could have waited at least one screen transition.
Yeah.
If you literally just beat this guy, it's like, hey, have two more. Like, man,
But-
come on.
but I'll admit, like that made me just think. I'm like, oh, they're just introducing you to new enemies. Like, it was. I thought it was actually kind of funny, where it's like, oh, okay, the boss now are these robots. Oh wait, they're not bosses. This is just the regular enemy now. I found humor in it.
Yeah, it's something.
Yeah, I mean, I think now, like near the end here, I think they were running out of steam a little bit. I think they were just trying to get it finished at this point. But all in all, I think they did a pretty good job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And for stage 8, you have another elevator climb, and after the elevator finally reaches the top, you have to defeat Mr. X's main henchman Shiva, and then
Wh-
Mr. X himself.
Which I absolutely love this fight. Like, I also thought it was hilarious because the entire fight, the entire game, you're beating up dudes with the only projectile that's not a melee weapon. Like you got the guys that throw knives, but the robots like shoot laser eyes rarely. So that for the most part in this game, you were fighting dudes with melee weapons, and so you fight. Oh, what's the henchman's name?
Shiva.
Shiva. So you fight Shiva, and it's an awesome ninja fight. With, I mean, he's rocking the sword, right?
Body hand.
I don't remember.
I think he was rocking a katana, and he's really flippy and quick and all over the place and very. It's a big old ninja fight, and you beat him, and then the boss is like, screw this, and whips out a classic like 1920s style gangster machine gun and just starts mowing
He's got a
down.
Tommy gun.
Yeah, he's got a Tommy gun. It starts mowing down everybody, friends, foes, like everybody, because all the henchmen start coming on the screen to attack you, and he just mows down everybody. And the enemies take damage, and you take damage, and he's just walking back and forth to the corners.
Well,
laughing.
you have to jump over the stream of bullets so that you don't get hit
friendly
by it.
fireworks both ways.
Yeah, I thought that was just hilarious how like the entire time, like you're, I don't know, I wasn't expecting a Tommy gun. I just thought it was funny.
Yeah. So after the Tommy gun, what do you experience then, sir?
Well, you just beat the out of Mr. X because he's not quite a grappler. He's really fast. And he's got a Tommy gun that you have to jump over. But you can always grab him and body slam him or combo him into the wall and then keep a combo going until he goes, because you've defeated him. Because he sucks. He's a badass.
Mr. X goes down without too much of a fight. And right after you do, there's no real cutscene or anything. It's just a quick graphic of Mr. X laying on the ground with the 4 protagonists of the game standing over him.
Yeah, you beat the game. Good job. Yeah. You defeated the bad guy.
I guess that's better than just a quick little game over in text and then just instantly restarting. But I think there could have been something more, maybe some dialogue or something to talk about, like how the city has now been brought back.
Well, wait, what did you play it on?
I played it on the 3DS.
Okay,
because so I saw
Sega Genesis has the and then the credits start rolling.
Yeah, there's the
and then you find Adam, who's been tortured to death. Well, not to death, but he's been being tortured, and he's chained up in the basement somewhere. And then Adam is Skate's nephew, correct?
Right?
Brother? Okay. So they find each other, and Skate's like, oh my god, Adam! And Axel finds Adam, and Blaze finds Adam, and they're like, oh yeah, it's Adam! And they find Adam. That's the whole thing!
I must have pressed something because I didn't get any of this.
Okay. The ending credits between like the developers' names and stuff, there's little pictures. So you see the boss laying on the ground with everybody in the background, and then it shows you like game design. And then you get to see another picture, and it's
Adam.
Yeah, and it's Adam chained up, and then after that, like,
and them opening
Adam
the door.
and Axel and Skate, and then like you see like Max and Blaze, and Max is giving a thumbs up, and then the credits kind of keep going, and then at the end, it's like all 5 of them standing outside of Mr. X's complex, and they're like looking into the sunrise, and there's a helicopter coming towards them.
Yeah.
And
they all live happily ever after.
I got too overzealous, and then the moment that I saw that end scene.
Yeah, you skipped out on all the little cinematic business at the end.
Yeah, as soon as I saw like there was credits coming in, I didn't expect that there was going to be some type of continuation of the story interjected in between that.
Yep, there's a little it's like 5 or 6 stills basically. There's no words to it, but it's just a bunch of like pictures that show you what happens.
Like going back to Street Fighter 2 type endings, it's very similar to those. It just flashes on the screen as the credits go by.
Well,
So,
I messed up. I'm gonna have to check that out later on. You had
so now
something
that we've
With the great music at the end too. It's like ba-da-ba,
Da-da-da,
ba-da-ba, da-da, ba-da, ba-da-ba-ba-ba, ba-da-da-ba.
this music brought to you by the Braucks brothers.
You're welcome. The music in this game is amazing, and that like the ending credits music is some of the best in this game.
We'll definitely be hearing that later on. But Chris, did you have something you wanted to add?
Oh no, I was just gonna say. Now that we've covered the levels, did we want to talk about individual things that we liked, or impressions?
Let's go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, we'll talk about our final thoughts and we'll go ahead and discuss our individual impressions then.
Sounds great.
Back and we're going to finish up this podcast with our final thoughts on the game. Kyle, why don't you go ahead and tell us what it was for you replaying today? We already kind of covered a lot of our thoughts and feelings about how we replayed the game in the past, but I want to hear your thoughts on it today. Is this a game that you continue to play regularly? And you mentioned Streets of Rage 4. How does this game compare to other games in the series?
Oh, okay. That makes a lot of sense. So Streets of Rage 2 is kind of a game I've gone back to dozens of times in my lifetime. It's amazing. It's wonderful. It has wonderful music. It has wonderful artwork. It has wonderful level design. It has wonderful enemy design. Streets of Rage 4, I think, is the proper sequel that they had not done. 3 was kind of okay, but 4 was kind of like that came out, 3-4 years ago? And that game's awesome. Has the
What
same
system is that on?
That's on the POOS, the PC and the PlayStation and the Xbox and the Switch, I believe.
I'll
Everything.
definitely wanna
Are you
check
talking
that
about
out.
Streets of Rage 4?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
new one.
Yeah.
So 2 was kind of the pinnacle of the side-scrolling beat 'em up style games. I played Blaze and Axel. Cory played Axel and Skate and Max. I think he was more
Max and Skate were my choices.
and he was fun. And we beat this game, I think, half a dozen times. Growing up and playing it as an adult, I've beaten it this way through. I think I just played it on easy mode. I was like, I don't care. I know how to beat these bosses. I don't want to deal with 4 health bars. I just want 2, and I'll just do fine. And it was a lot of fun. I really thoroughly enjoyed it once again.
Have you ever played through Streets of Rage 3?
No, not all the way through. No, I never beat that one.
So I don't have much experience with Streets of Rage as a whole, as a series. I own Streets of Rage 4 and I played through that and I thought it was great. But some just knowledge I picked up from friends and just being in this hobby for so long, my understanding of Streets of Rage 3 is that the normal setting is significantly more difficult than the Japanese hard setting.
Okay. I don't know anything about that. I just know it's kind of a boring game. Like, Axel is not as fun to play.
There's a
Blaze
damn
is not-
kangaroo in it.
There's a kangaroo in it, and it's like, oh, I don't care about this. This isn't fun.
Do you
There
have
was
to
a
fight the
kangaroo
kangaroo?
in Tekken, and that
Well,
was
no,
pretty fun.
that's
Oh,
a different game,
there is a kangaroo in Streets of Rage 3. He's on the box art.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
That's
He's an unlockable character in Streets of Rage.
Oh, you
3.
are the kangaroo.
Yeah, his name is Rue the kangaroo.
Oh my. Okay. Okay,
It's a very absurd thing.
Yeah, no,
We
it's
might-
goofy.
we might get around to Bare Knuckle 3 if this
Ooh,
podcast
I-
lasts for
I would,
another 100
yeah,
years.
yeah, okay. I'm into that.
Corey, what are your thoughts?
Like final thoughts on the game? Go play
Final
Streets
thoughts.
of Rage. Like it's
The first one?
No, number 2. That's the one we're talking about, Chris. Pay attention. I know it's very hard for you. Anyway, yeah, like this is a great game. We've mentioned it several times now, but I really think that this music is some of the best in early video game history, I would say. And it literally could fit in like a club scene today.
Yeah,
It's
as a
just-
quick, I had the character select as my alarm for the last like 3 years.
Yeah,
Huh.
it's great music.
That's
Like
awesome.
it is really, really good. Beyond that, like the graphics look really nice. The gameplay is really smooth. There's not a lot of issues with slowdown. The enemies all feel really well done. It's just a really good title. Like I think that you can't really go wrong. And I've never personally heard anyone really complain about this game. I'm sure there are people out there that are like, "Oh, I don't like side scrolls. I don't like Streets of Rage. It's dumb." But like honestly, like I don't know anyone that has ever been like, "I don't want to play that. That looks stupid." Like everyone that I've ever dealt with has had fun with this game. So if you're looking for like a retro like side scroller beat 'em up, Streets of Rage 2 is a very, very, very good title.
For me, it's a beat 'em up, and that means that there's only so much you can really say about it. But it's refined to the point that it's excellent throughout. I mentioned a couple things that I disliked, but they're very small points in comparison to the big picture. It's essentially an arcade game, and it has aspects of that, like the scoring system, but that doesn't detract from the gameplay, which is where this game shines. That mixed with the excellent visuals and the god tier music really sets this game apart from others in the genre, both from its time period and compared to beat 'em ups of today. Chris, bring us home. What are your final thoughts on this game?
So I actually have quite a few final thoughts. Like, I think like this is the perfect. Like, if you want to go back and play a classic beat 'em up game, like this is literally the perfect one because it takes everything that all the best parts out of all the other ones and puts it all in one game, including like I said, like mentioning the levels again, like they are every level that you've liked, like every favorite level like, that you liked out of a different game is a level in this game. If that makes sense, like the level designs were great. I think the characters were great because all 4 of them are completely, totally different. I did play through on all 4 of them. I only beat it with 2 of them. We didn't even talk about that. Like, what did you guys?
No, yeah,
start
what's
with?
everyone's like favorite character?
Blaze is my favorite. We were playing. I was playing Blaze the other day with you, Corey.
Yeah.
But like Axel Blaze, I think Axel's kind of your standard kind of guy. You can easily. He's not super fast. He's not super slow. He's not super strong. He jumps fine, but he always his special is like the best one in the game. You're like, okay, you could easily utilize him.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
like well-rounded.
Yeah.
I always default to the default guy. So Axel is my boy.
Yeah, I think Axel is like if you want an easy mode, play with Axel. He is definitely like the most OP. He was the last one I played with. I started with Blaze, then went to Max, then went to Skate, and then finished with Axel. And Skate was the first one I beat it with. I struggled with Blaze, and then got a
was gonna
little bit better. Then
was-
and then did better with Max. And then Skate, I found like, oh, all right, like I'm gonna crush it. And then I thought, I'm like, oh, like Skate's got to be the best character in the game. Like I was wrecking it with Skate, and then I started playing with Axel, and I just felt like I was a god.
Yeah, Axel can actually grapple people and throw them around, and Skate
And-
really
and he-
can't.
And Skate has one thing going for him, and that's his jump attack, or I mean, like his dash attack, where he like,
Yes.
you know,
His little forward somersault kick you in the
Yes.
face. Yes. Skate's
Yeah.
a lot of fun.
yeah,
Skate is my favorite character, and I think it's just because he's so fast and so
Yes.
quick to hit with.
me too.
You can be all over the screen with him. He's a very fun character to play.
And he's got the one thing that I did feel was kind of missing in this game, which is a double tap to run.
Yes.
Skate has that because I
Okay,
started with Blaze.
Thank
and
you
she,
for mentioning it.
yes,
Because the one thing that I kept thinking about during this playthrough was that I just wished that there was a sprint button or a dash feature. I didn't try any other characters other than Axel. That's all I play with. So I didn't know that there was another character that had that. I
Yeah.
probably would have picked them if I knew that.
yeah, and like I said, Skate was my third one. So by the and Max was the one right before it, who is slower than a turtle.
Yeah,
Uh,
I end up killing myself with Maxlot because I end up spamming his special to go forward faster.
Yep,
So
that's what I was doing too. Like, or I was doing his sliding kick to
Yeah.
try to get across the stage faster because he's just. I love how hard he hits because he can like.
yeah, he's
two-shot
a
minions.
big hulking brute of a man, and he's very slow.
But he's he's slower than a herd of turtles. But then Axel is just a powerhouse. So anyways, back to the rest of my thoughts. Yeah, so I love the characters and how each one's completely different. Like they don't feel like they were recycled at all. And I liked the variety of enemies too. Like even they recycle the enemies a lot, but there's a good enough variety where it doesn't get boring to me. Like
Well, and until the last couple of levels, like there is like a new boss on every stage as well.
and then
too.
yeah, I really loved like the last level where you do get that elevator boss rush where all of a sudden you get all these mega all these mega enemies all hitting you at the same time.
It is very
like-
much you said mega. It's very much like the Mega Man where you're going against all the guys again at the end.
Yeah,
Well, and I think like every good side scroller game should do that. This is one of them that does do that. Like I think about God of War, the first 3 in that franchise always had the gauntlet fight. Streets of Rage always did that. I'm trying to think of Final Fight did that.
it is a cliche.
Yeah, it's fine, but it's a fun cliche. You should do that.
It's a fun one, and in this game, instead of making it feel like oh I'm finally like using all my talents, like I don't know, it didn't feel like I was putting a whole lot of thought into it. It just felt like
it wasn't forced.
It wasn't forced, and all of a sudden it just made me feel like I'm just kicking butt. Like I'm finally, I'm sick of all these snakes on this plane, sort of, like.
Okay.
And you were just plowing. Is Sean still here? He's quiet.
I'm here.
Okay.
He's laughing at you.
That reference.
I mean, like you just like I said, it's not like Mega Man where you're like accumulated all these weapons or you've accumulated all this knowledge to use against your enemy. No, like just, they throw so many at you that you were literally. You can't throw, you can't swing a stick without hitting a bad guy.
And I'm just better at timing my attacks now. Yeah. Because I've practiced for 6 hours at this point.
And it's just so satisfying. But then also, like I said, the variety of enemies. I liked one thing that I thought was kind of cool. Because this was what year was this game? 92.
92.
One thing I thought that was cool about this game was the fact because it's a side scroller, but it kind of has like the lanes, so it kind of has that 3D feel. But some of the enemies are facing the screen, some of the enemies are parallel to the screen, and then some of the enemies have the back to the screen, which I thought was like a clever little way. I'm like, oh, they're just kind of. I thought that was a clever way of adding more depth and dimension to the game without wasting more resources. Instead of having characters where you could see the front or the back, No, like these characters are facing the screen, the punks are facing away from the screen, and it to me it did feel like they were coming at you from more directions, even though it's really just lanes. But I thought I just thought that was cool, and it's something that I don't know if other games did that sort of trick to add depth to the game, but I thought it was cool. And besides that. I mean, it still holds up. It looks great. It's got such a great classic feel. It's such a fun fighter. It's not too long of a play. This was great. And I will have to mention, Gibbs saw me playing a screen. He walked through and saw me playing a level, and he's like, "Is this Ninja Turtles?" Because I just wanted to mention Ninja Turtles one more time. But
and Pizza Hut.
Oh yeah, I didn't mention Pizza Hut at all. There is no. Oh, one thing I did think was funny in this game. Yeah, in Ninja Turtles you eat pizza for health, and in other games you eat like hamburgers and stuff. This game you eat apples and turkey or chicken. Like this game
Yeah,
promotes.
whole
Yeah,
chickens.
It's a
Yeah,
whole
you-
roast chicken.
This game
Well, it's like
promotes health-
Castlevania. It comes from Castlevania.
This game promotes healthy eating.
That's a chicken? I thought it was a ham in Castlevania.
Isn't it chicken in Castlevania?
I don't
I
know.
thought it was like a
I'm
leg
looking
or
it
I'm
up.
gonna have
something.
to pull up the manual. But I think that's it. Did you have anything else, Chris, that you wanted to add?
Oh no, well, and yeah, I agree with 100% with you guys with music. Music is great in this game, and this game, I 10 out of 10 highly recommend.
10 out of 10. S tier. Me too.
I think we're all in agreement. It's one of the best games on the Sega Genesis, and there's a reason that they keep bringing this game to all these different compilations. If this game sucked, it wouldn't always be one of the shining stars that you had.
And I would make the argument not just for the Sega, but I mean like for the genre in general. Like this game is so polished and just perfect.
Yeah, I was gonna mention. You mentioned Sean the compilation, and I think they try to put the first one on compilations. It's like no, Streets of Rage 1 isn't nearly as good as Streets of Rage 2, so keep that one out of here. And I think slowly they kind of referenced or got rid of the first one and kept the second one as kind of the trophy. Because even the third one, they're like, no, we're never going to put the third one in a compilation.
Yeah, we've
The
already
second one-
discussed how the third one's a weird kangaroo
Yeah, it's a
style.
bad game.
Yeah,
So is the
it sucks.
first one. They're both bad.
It's
And
the
then
Mega
the
Man
second
2
one kicks
syndrome.
ass. Yeah.
It's the Mega Man 2 syndrome. On the NES Classic, they did not include Mega Man 1. They didn't include Mega Man 3. They included Mega Man 2.
Because they knew what they were doing.
Yeah, there's a reason for that. But guys, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap this up.
Happy
you
1 year anniversary, everybody.
Happy
Yes,
birthday.
It's been a whole year, and I am so thankful for this show. And I'm going to continue to thank each and every person that listens. And I also want to thank Meg. She's the one that did or redid our banner, and she's the one who added the anniversary touches. So when this show is on YouTube, it's going to have the anniversary banner. You can
That's
follow
pretty
us at ReviewByte. That's Review BYTE. We're on iHeartRadio as well as a few other podcasts. We had the Discord server. We've had a couple of people join.
Once
We'd
again,
like more.
we talk about this every time with the Discord server. Would you jerks just join the Discord server?
We want to hear from you. But thank you so much. Even if you're just going to continue to lurk, thank you for being a part of this. Next month is October, and that means Halloween. And to celebrate the holiday, we're going to be playing through Maniac Mansion for the PC.
Are
I'm
you
playing on
really
that,
going to
yes.
be doing Maniac Mansion?
We're
Yep.
going to do Maniac Mansion.
I
It's-
would absolutely love to do Maniac Mansion.
It's.
I have not played it.
I haven't.
Me
either.
yeah, me neither. Yeah, no.
Okay.
Yeah, like
I
Sean
don't
is
think
asking-
any of us have.
That's an
Yeah.
old Scum game, is it not?
It is.
Okay, all right. I'm playing through
And-
Monkey Island 5.5 right now, 3.5, whatever they're calling it, the new one. And I'm like, oh yeah, I love these old Scum games. So if you want to do Maniac Mansion, I'd be happy.
I've done so much research into this game, and then after researching the game, I did more research into Scum,
Yeah.
and I have so much to talk about. It's going to be a very
I think I've played
nerdy
all
episode.
of them except for Maniac Mansion. I'm fairly certain.
well. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be my first time playing through.
Okay.
Corey, have you ever played through it?
No, I haven't.
so
It's
this is
gonna
gonna be all of
brand
us.
new for all of us.
And such
Sweet.
an iconic game too.
Yeah, everyone loves it.
Hopefully, we're going to get 2 episodes out in October. We're planning on Maniac Mansion for the first game. And then, Corey, what is it we're doing? We're
It's
doing
Super Ghouls and Ghosts, so
Super
Chris
Ghouls
doesn't
and
mess the
Ghosts.
title.
I'm not doing that one.
That's going to be it for our show. Thank you so much for listening and taking the time out of your day.
Thank you for the video games.